Welcome to DIY for SMBs. This is our episode 7, and this is on data management. Go around the room and we'll introduce everybody here. I'll start to my right with you, young man.
Austin Ringland, System Administrator.
Austin Dones, Systems Administrator.
Nate Jewett, VCIO.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Because we've had several episodes where we've had multiple titles now.
It's just one of those things.
I think you should go with CTO this time.
I could be.
Chief Technology Officer?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Companies
All right.
and flex,
VCTO?
So.
Yeah, VCTO. You're the Virtual Technology Officer.
Same thing.
A lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah. So
Job titles moving all over.
Exactly. So Nate's getting the new title every time.
Yep.
So I'm Jason Null, Vice President here at MIS Solution, and your smiling host. So let's talk about data management. Let's get into the importance of understanding data, how it's kind of generated, collected, stored within SMBs, and maybe larger kind of small level enterprises. And we kind of talk about what you guys see every day, how you manage it, how you control it, how you protect it.
Not a lot of management of data for our clients. I mean, we obviously back it up. We ensure that our clients can access it, right? So database administrators isn't something we do on a daily basis, but we do take the data that is being used daily, make sure that it's fast, that it's backed up in case anything happens to it.
I would say you guys do more than that. I mean, data versus database management, it's kind of a couple different things, right? So data, if we're thinking like Word documents, Excel, you guys are building, whether it's a file share somewhere, putting shares on it, managing sizes of volumes, to modern day data, which is stored in cloud, SharePoint, Google Drives, or Dropbox Box is another one. So, what do you guys do with that kind of stuff? I mean, how are you managing data that way?
File permissions, network shares, like you said.
Right. I mean, it depends on the client's needs, obviously. So, the two types of data storage that we kind of, if you want to say manage, would probably be on-site versus cloud data.
Yeah.
Right? So, some of our clients have physical file servers that are on-site, and that's what works best for them. It's quick local storage. Maybe they're dealing with big data, so videos, large spreadsheets, those kinds of things work better on-site locally than maybe potentially in the cloud. And then we have a lot of other clients that would prefer the flexibility of cloud data storage. That could take a few extra seconds to download the video per se than needing it instantly. But they would rather have the flexibility. So instead of needing to get on a VPN when they're at a coffee shop to work, they can just go to a website and access it.
So data's changed, at least with the housing, that you have the anytime, anywhere access much faster, right? From being cloud. One of the things you mentioned I want to go back to a little bit is flexibility. So that flexibility is obviously remote access. I think another one of those flexibilities, and you can kind of tell me if I'm going the right direction here, is probably the ability to expand that storage quickly, correct?
Sure. We can obviously build in scalability in local instances as well. But with cloud, it's just as easy as how much do you want to pay for.
Right.
You click the plus button, and you pay for it, and you have it, instead of needing to go on site and actually put in a physical new drive or plan for that sort of thing. So yes, flexibility is greatly increased with cloud. So and scalability.
Yeah. Do we see clients doing hybrid solutions, kind of doing some stuff on site, some stuff in the cloud, or does it seem to be either one or the other?
I mean, if you're talking in relation to data storage in particular, obviously there's a lot of solutions that are hybrid that are not in relation to data storage that we implement. But for data storage in particular, I wouldn't say we have much of the way of hybrid. So either you're going to have either local or cloud, and it's possible that we could do hybrid, but it's going to be less cost effective. So certainly we'd be open to that option, but it hasn't come up as something that would be viable or worth the extra price or effort.
You do see sometimes those people creating their own hybrid is where they'll put some stuff in like their OneDrive or in a SharePoint site to just edit a document on the go and not have to worry about saving it all the time and then dump it somewhere else when they get back to the office or whatever.
The only other time I've ever seen like anything hybrid is like some clients will want to keep maybe something local just for, like you said, like their CAD drawings and bigger documents. Like they'll put most of smaller stuff in SharePoint and then they'll have their CAD drawings, bigger documents still local.
So just to kind of cover what you're saying, so they may have local storage, but they have, nowadays we're using Office 365.
Get it
the
anyways.
company's not using
Right.
OneDrive or stuff, but their people are like, hey, I have this, I can move the data here and I have access to it much easier. And so sometimes the employees are migrating themselves and working in a hybrid solution to be able to be more flexible in their job. Maybe they're a salesperson, they travel a lot.
I mean, realistically, if we're going down like that far, then probably every client we have is hybrid because we implement implement OneDrive just for backup reasons, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, SharePoint and OneDrive are the same product, just with different names for depending on what kind of data. Obviously, OneDrive is personal files and SharePoint is shareable.
Yeah, so it's
files.
basically OneDrive is my documents,
right?
And then SharePoint is more like the P drive, which is our public drive, or U drive, or not U drive, but any other drive letter you're using, whatever you want to call it. So,
so if we're talking personal files in OneDrive, that is a very hybrid solution.
Yeah.
So there are certain clients where they could be storing their files, using the OneDrive client. Sometimes we recommend that, sometimes we don't, depending on their use case. But they could have local files on their computer that continuously sync to the cloud. They're, like I said, depending on the use case, that is, if it's a good solution for them or not is the conversation to have. But it does happen.
And that's one of those things that, when we as the MSP come in, we can see how you're using your data. If you're not storing the big files and the mass amounts of data, that's when we can recommend, hey, let's maybe push towards a cloud solution because it would be a better option for you and your employees as they're working remotely. Or
I kind of also think about this too, is applications, right? So in the past, we've had applications on premise, whether it's like, I'll use something like a QuickBooks, right? And the database is local, or the file, whatever you want to look at it, is stored on a server. Today, as those clients are moving, they may still have files locally, but they've moved their applications and the data for it into like QuickBooks Online. I think those are great solutions. It gives the accountants we've seen be a lot more flexible. They're no longer having to remote into a company to get to a machine that they hope somebody left on or somebody's using at the time because they have one QuickBooks license. Now they have the flexibility in the cloud. So I see it not only from like data of my personal Word files that I want anytime, anywhere, but even applications as we move that kind of data into the cloud, I think makes companies way more flexible than they have been in the past. And of course, we go back to discussions we've had before is we're not having to buy servers anymore. So we're not having that huge expense. Now we have a reoccurring expense. It's more like a utility bill. In the wintertime I use my heating and electric costs me $200 a month.
Right.
In the summertime it's maybe a little less, but you can kind of budget for that versus I just bought a server, I spent $10,000. I want to run this thing as long as I can. And I'm not really even thinking about the fact that it's so slow that it's costing me so much money because my employees are waiting. Where the cloud just continuously gets faster and faster. We talked about internet connections being increased and keep getting faster and faster because of that cloud. So as we're talking about like management of data, like do you see or have companies ever coming to you guys asking you guys to help them with their data? Do you ever see them retiring data, actually getting rid of data, or is it my impression of data today, which is I think that we've all become digital hoarders. I don't think people delete anything anymore. I think that data you just look at it like, well, I don't need it, but maybe I might, so it's not taking up any space. I'll just leave it.
I might need this, maybe 10 years down the road for a lawsuit. You never know.
Yeah,
True.
I don't think any.
I can see it from a legal and financial standpoints. You have certain pieces you can keep.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of data. I just think about my data. I actually every so often go through and clean up stuff, and I'm amazed that things I've kept from 5 jobs ago.
Right.
And we're going back to 1999. I've got files that are things that I worked on. I'm like, I might need that again. And I'm like, it's 23 years later, 24 years later.
Something that you probably did on server 2003.
No, 2000. Probably actually Windows NT was probably the platform at the time, before, but still. And it's probably running in, like, who knows what version of Word. And I've kept stuff like that. And recently I've started personally cleaning up my own data and trying to get rid of things. I obviously find that I think the worst thing probably as a society we have, data-wise, is photos.
Oh, 100%. Can you imagine the amount of data just in photos that there is?
It's probably ridiculous. I heard a statement that said that in the last 10 years, we have created more data than if you took that, say it was 2010. If you measured all the data ever created till 2010, that in 10 years we've created more data than that ever took to get to that point in history. That's how much data we have. And it's just, and exponentially is continuing to grow.
People are wanting to go digital. You got the legal assistants and paralegals with the scanners on their desks. They're scanning every single document in so they can keep it for a later date.
I think with data management, it's the same. Business use is the same as personal use. So, you have anyone with an iPhone, they're going to fill that iPhone storage up to the top with their pictures and not think about it for 1 second until it's full, and then they're going to go get a new iPhone with more storage. Or if maybe they'll delete some pictures.
Yeah.
And that's the only time they're going to think about it, right? So that's probably most companies as well. It scales all the way up to probably even large corporations. They want to keep everything as much as they can.
Yeah.
I hate keeping photos on my phone. Like, I don't want my storage to be full.
Yeah.
My wife has 5,000 photos just sitting on her phone at all times. I can't do that.
And I think we're getting better at data management. I mean, there are obviously things in place that do deduplication. So instead of having, if in a company, if there's a file out there that is the same file in the past and it was across everybody's home directory, so say it's the employee handbook and everybody has a copy of it. In the past, that was everywhere. There could be 200 employees had it in their folder. Today, at least storage is smarter to look at it and say, I have this, here are the markers. I'm only storing it one time, but it's accessible to you. You don't notice it.
Right.
You think you actually have it. So that's kind of cool. And I think we've gotten better with compression in different ways and files, hopefully saving smaller. Sometimes I think they just continue to get bigger like everything else. I mean, even our operating systems have gotten bigger. Just to install Windows nowadays is, twice the size. When we're running into issues with iOS on devices that you would think, I'm fine with 16 gigs, iPad when the OS is 13 and won't even install anymore.
Right.
So
I think that might be something that honestly does end up pushing people completely to the cloud, just because like with an iPhone you can just buy Apple data storage. Like that's what I do. Like it's easier, never have to worry about like I'm running out. Like it's pretty much unlimited.
Right, what's $2?
Right. Like
right?
I really don't care.
And if you need more, what's $2 more?
I mean, from a company standpoint, it is a cost point, but like you said, I mean, realistically, it would be similar because best practice, I mean, you're buying a server, once every, hopefully 3 to 5 years anyways. So, I mean, you're going to spend that money really regardless. So
I think one thing that I really like about moving data into the cloud is what we can do to manage the data more so than we could manage the data on premise. And I mean manage data from a security standpoint.
Yeah.
Office 365, if you get very technical, you can get into basically locking people out of files. You have the ability not to copy stuff. You have all kinds of security policies that you can implement to really truly help protect your data. And if somebody leaves a company and you have the right tool sets on stuff, you can remove that data from a machine so that they don't have it, which is really cool. So, if somebody had in the past where we were running on a Windows, 2012 server and you're doing offline replication and you're leaving and you're synchronizing your files, you could have those if you got, if somebody fired you, you still have that data. Today, the moment you connect to any type of internet connection, which you need pretty much to work, right? Your data would be removed. I think so. There's some great policies in place to protect companies and protect their data and their intellectual property going forward. I think security overall, even just from a two-factor standpoint, I think there's a lot more protection in the cloud if you're enabling conditional access, two-factor to protect your data going forward.
I mean, there's also a lot more protection too, because you're not worrying about like faulty drives or anything like that when you have a on-site server.
Yeah, I mean, we think about how many times we've had, a drive go bad, and then occasionally even a RAID controller freaking out, and you have an entire server go down.
Yep.
And we're talking, yes, we're running backups. Yes, we're trying to maintain that stuff, but you have to now fix the hardware, right? And then you now need to restore. And when you've got terabytes of data, restores do not go fast.
No.
It doesn't matter if we've got 10 gig connectivity back into the server, it's going to take some time to get it back. Which it's a great point when you look at cloud. We're not dealing with hard drive failures. I mean, we're not.
Somebody
is. Somebody at at Microsoft or Google or whatever other places storing data for us. Somebody's managing those. And from that standpoint, they're now managing the volumes for us. They're managing the data. They're doing type deduplication for us. They're doing data center replication so that the data is available to if a data center goes down, it's at another hot site and you don't notice those outages.
Yeah, I mean cloud storage is and just simply is expensive. But you're getting a lot from that cost. I mean, everything you just said. You get high availability, you get flexibility, and so on and so forth. That's something you would have to pay significantly more for an on-site server. I mean, if you want high availability for your on-site servers, you buy multiple servers so that there's ones that can run your stuff when one dies. So you go from one server, and if you want high availability like it wouldn't be in the cloud, then maybe you have 3 servers, 3 times the cost, right? So it all depends on the use case for the client and what their needs are, but you get what you pay for with cloud.
I think that's a good point, Austin. When I think about that, if I was going to truly build out something that is really redundant, has all this type of protection in place, so say, I need to have 2 servers available for one fails, the other one takes over. We can look at like ESX and, high availability stuff going on to centralized storage with redundant controllers, redundant power supplies on everything, to then battery backup units, to generators, to multiple internet connections, redundant firewalls, redundant switches, redundant uplinks. I mean, you start adding that up.
Oh, yeah.
And most places don't do that in the first place, right? I mean, very rarely do we. I mean, obviously, larger client partners for us do that stuff, but even to a certain point, they stop, right? Mm-hmm. They may have, but if you were going to build that out, it's $100,000.
Oh, sure.
For a small business, if not more.
Then you have a data center, and then you could just go with cloud, and they already have a data center built for you.
So when you start thinking about maybe that storage is costing me $500 a month, that actually is not bad.
Yeah.
And then I don't ever have to upgrade again. Right. I just have $500 cost forever, which is fine. It's budgetable. I mean, they may increase rates over time, but I can certainly budget for that. It makes my company way more productive from an overall standpoint. I have much better data protection. I have much better compliance, and the security is, depending on how you're doing it, you could have top-notch security, something you wouldn't have on premise.
I mean, even like as far as like a disaster, I mean, even with all that redundancy, your building burns down or you have a flood or whatever else, I mean, all that stuff still.
So now we have to have a hot site, right? So now I take that whole $100,000 cost. Now I'm going to duplicate it, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to duplicate it on the other side of the Mississippi in another data center, right? Because I'm trying to get geolocation going, right? I don't want my data located in the same areas. If I'm in Cincinnati and I've got a backup running here, I want my hot site somewhere else. I want my backup somewhere else too, right? I don't want it in the same. We've seen tornadoes rip through this area and hop around and go 30 miles across the place and wipe out a bunch of stuff. It could take out all your data. So having that hot site now, it just keeps increasing those costs. That's what you get out of cloud. You get companies that have built these massive data centers they're replicating for geolocation for you. You've got all this protection. They have all the fire. They are bunkers and can take, hurricane level storms coming in and just wiping out everything around them, and they're fine. Unless a Tomahawk cruise missile hits it, it may not survive, or an EMP of some kind. But depending on how much cement you have, you might be okay too. So
I think if we're getting to that point, we got bigger things to worry about.
We do. I mean,
how much data we've got.
I always make that joke, like, some people are like, are we protected? Like, if we get hit by an atomic bomb, it ain't going to really matter. So we're good. But, at the same time, we talk about backups, right? Today, we're backing up, obviously, on-premise environments. But we're also backing up, the cloud's great. And I think a lot of places fall short thinking, I'm in the cloud, I'm 100% protected. Which there is a lot of protection there, but I think that I personally still think there's a need for backups. What do you guys think? Do you think we still need to back up the cloud? Do we just leave the cloud alone? Do we just let it rain? What?
I mean, like you said, it's really just how protected the customer wants to be. I mean, the partner wants to be. If it feels, in my opinion, more backups the better. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. But then again, if you're kind of a risk taker and feel like your stuff's safe, then go for it.
Risk taker.
There's levels of, in cloud you can get, how backed up you want to be. You can back up your own stuff that's in the cloud already. You can, it's in a different data center, or, that your current data is already replicated across 2 data centers, and you can pay for 3 or 4 or, whatever. And then you could scale that down to, having your own local backups in case the world implodes.
Yeah. But, I mean, we do obviously reverse cloud backup. So we have data in the cloud and we're pulling that data down to a local device now, so that we have it and we can get to our information. I think a lot of times with that stuff, it's just that, just in case, right? I mean, it probably is fine, but if somebody goes through and wipes out a bunch of data and then somehow the retention, because I know like within Office 365, within SharePoint, and even OneDrive, you have a recycle bin in a sense, so you have retention. You also have the ability, which this is what I really love about cloud, when you talk about the ability to roll back data, right? Because of revisions. I love, when I was training people on using OneDrive, this is one of the biggest things I used to point out, because everybody does this. You open up that Word document and you're going to reuse it, right? And you forget to save as something else, and you start working on it and you hit save and you realize you just wiped out everything you had. In the past, you have to call up the IT department, submit a ticket, hopefully they'll go get tapes, restore my file, and I'm good, right? Today, I can go out there and say, show me previous version, and right there I have, I think by default, what is it, like 10 retention points?
More than that, even.
Yeah.
It's like, goes back quite a while.
Yeah, and you can be like, I can just roll my file back to what it was before, plus I have the new one, which I love that. I mean, that's power into the end user that we haven't had. That's the power of cloud. I'm sure that there are ways to do that on-prem, but in every small business I've ever been into, from a data standpoint, with the servers that they're running and their money that they're investing in their infrastructures, nobody had that in place until we went to Office 365. I thought that's just such a game changer.
I mean, that's a benefit of, Microsoft did that on purpose, right? They want you to go cloud to pay more money to them, which makes sense, but they were giving you more features as well. So, yeah, there really isn't a way to do that on-prem. I mean, you can back up a Word document an hour a day, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we used to run, the product was, I think it was shadow copies, but it always seemed to be problematic.
But with what you're talking about, it's by default, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you click on the revisions and it tells you the person who made the revision, like every revision, like every word they changed in the document pretty much for months. Yeah. I mean, the person, the time it happened, every single change you can go back. So it's like, why did Rhonda go and put this wrong number in this spreadsheet? I mean, it's like it was Rhonda at this time, and we can go back to that exact time.
Oh, yeah. And I don't think you have to worry about your data quality either in the cloud. I think that it's pretty much, I think they're using such high-end systems that the data is intact. In the past, on-premise, data quality wasn't too bad of something to worry about, but we were running check disks, running defrags, making sure information stores were repaired, And today, I don't worry about if my data's having any issues. If there was some kind of hiccup on a drive somewhere that caused some minor corruption in data, in the cloud, I just don't even think about it.
I don't really think about it. I mean, I don't worry about it if it's on-prem or cloud for our customers anyway, to be honest. We have so many different layers.
Right.
So many different layers of backups that the world would literally have to end before the data's gone, right? Unless somebody really made up a huge mistake or something. But I don't really worry about it. I mean, we have the way the data is stored. Like if a hard drive fails, it's fine. If maybe 2 hard drives fail, it's still fine. And if all the hard drives failed, if the burning, like we talked about before, if the building catches on fire, if somebody got pissed and went and took the server and threw it down a stairwell, it's fine. It's backed up to a device that's on site. We can take that and restore it. If somebody knows what they're doing and burns the whole building down because they're pissed, then that's fine too. We have it backed up to the cloud, so we can restore that. And that cloud is, backed up itself. Many different ways.
Can restore to the cloud, which is cool. So if we had an on-site premise and we went office space on it, like the fax machine took the baseball bats to it, right, and beat it up, we could restore it into Azure or AWS, depending whatever product we're using, which is kind of cool. Again, the biggest problem we have is it's just how long will it take to come back online, right? I mean, if you can wait 24 hours, I think even we had a recent large-scale outage of a partner, and we had data. We were able to get data back up and very quickly, within a day, for some of the bigger pieces. But a lot of the servers were coming back online instantly because of just the right pieces to restore, having the ability to run it on a temporary device until the primary device is fixed, and then just having fast drives, lots of 10 gig connections helps all that. So it's just a matter of time. And I think that comes down to communication. If you communicate with the customer, the partner, and let them know expectations that, hey, yes, this is backed up, you're all on-prem, it's going to be a little while. I think that they get it. I mean, it's physics.
Yeah, it's all scalable to what is failing. So if a hard drive fails, it's as easy as putting in a new hard drive. If the whole server's dead, then we've been implementing, we can talk about this as well, a solution like their backup solution itself can start running the environment instantly, or almost instantly, as fast as you can take to call us or we find out it's broken. So it could be as fast as an instant restore if something happens. If that's not available or something happens to the backup device, then then it would take a little longer. And if that's the case, then it could be the case that there's something physically wrong with the building, right? And if the building's burned down, then I think people are maybe going to be a little more receptive to time. The longer time it's going to take to restore.
At least you hope so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
some people do have unrealistic expectations, But in case of fire, you're going to be down a little bit,
Right. So it depends on the scenario, and I think it all scales with the scenario.
And the nice thing about cloud is it just seems to be there. We haven't. I can't think of any major hiccups that have happened. Occasionally, one of these vendors will have a minor outage or a platform outage. It doesn't happen that often, especially today. 10 years ago, when it was a younger technology, it happened.
I mean, if you're thinking about the solutions and the products and the businesses that we work with, I mean, Microsoft data stores like AWS, Amazon, Google. I mean, these are companies that if they failed or if they had a large scale failure, then your business wouldn't be the only thing having a problem. It would be worldwide. Yeah. A worldwide problem. So
like the solar flares we just had, man.
Right. So you wouldn't be the only one. So yeah, who knows? I mean, maybe we would have an unprecedented event like that where a large company would have a big problem. But I mean, we could have another solution available potentially like that if we talked about local backups. I mean, that would be a scenario, an unforeseen scenario that we potentially would have planned for.
Yeah. So. I mean, I think that if we're backing up, obviously we're backing up SharePoint and OneDrive down to a local device. If we had to get those back up online locally, we could. Yeah. We could get the data presentable to somebody to use. But we're never really looking at that scenario. We're looking at restoring usually a file because somebody deleted it, it hit the recycle bin, hit the retention point, and now it's 90 days, and they're like, oh, I need that back. And because of the way we do retentions, we can recover the file and get it back up to, there is still a limited time because it comes down to space and retentions.
You get what you pay for. So we have that discussion with our customers.
If you want data forever, your backup costs are just going to increase exponentially every month to supply that type of storage. If you can go 2 years, 1 year, whatever, your costs go down just because of the retentions. I personally like the cloud. I think it's changed the way we do business. I think it's changed, business for small businesses. We talked about the startup in the past episodes for small businesses. They're no longer needing to meet with an IT firm and spend thousands of dollars. They meet with an IT firm like us, tell us what they want, and we could have an infrastructure in place and up and running in hours for them to be able to kick their business off from phones instantly to storage and email, all moving forward so that they can now start making money and move to the next level. So
yeah, I think it's definitely like a time saver. for an MSP and for the partner, honestly, anything that saves us time is really saving them time. Even from if you need if your VM needs more RAM or more resources of any kind, it's literally 2 clicks for Azure. It's in the downtime is very minimal compared to if you're running a physical server. Hopefully you have extra RAM and resources, but if not, then that's someone had to go out and install that stuff, and So it's really just a time saver.
I always wonder about your generation. You guys, and even younger than you as are coming up, these are technicians and young men who physically never worked on a server, stuck their hands into dealing with RAID controllers and stuff like that. It's as we continue to move like this, that's a different. You're now truly administering storage, security, and the cloud for people versus in the past, you were doing that, but at the same time, you're also having to worry about all the physical pieces. I think it's it takes away a huge headache for us. We're not having to worry about that extra piece now. Is the building secure? Is the box running okay? How do we monitor these hard drives? How do we get these alerts for RAID controllers? What kind of remote card do we need to be able to get into a server? I don't have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely much more productive from our standpoint of things are in the cloud, in my opinion, for the most part, especially data and phones, really anything that can fail. If it's in the cloud and it's secure, then...
Our build times are so much faster because of that.
Oh, yeah.
Because, we're not having to order stuff. We're not having to wait on hardware.
Don't have to go out, implement it.
Yeah, someone else has already done all that, ordered all that. We're just boom, I need this much resource, and it's available, and having infrastructures, upgrades in place. I love, too, that because of cloud, we're not, so I'll give it this example, Office 365, right? So if I'm a small business, and I'm entirely in Office 365, I'm using SharePoint, I'm using OneDrive, obviously I have email, I may even be using, Stream internally for internal YouTube for training and stuff like that. And all these other products and Teams, all this great stuff. I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to have any type of hardware anymore. I don't have to have any type of expense like that. I could just be up, running. I'm golden. I feel like that's changed everything.
We may be having the same conversation in 20 years, but for personal PCs.
Yeah.
They've already started Microsoft's already started offering, PCs in the cloud that can be built instantly.
Yeah.
Honestly, I could easily foresee no one having an actual a hardware computer laptop anymore in the next 20 years. They could just be using their phones as a thin client. They bring that one device everywhere. They use it for everything, and they access their work stuff. Everything. You could plug your phone into a monitor. It would bring up a cloud computer, and you don't need anything else.
Well, here's my question, right? We move into Docker and containers and stuff like that. We're truly moving out of an operating system, right? From that sense, do we really need an OS like that, just make Word available to me or whatever. And I think that's Office 365 is doing that for me. I'm now not, I know where I was going earlier. I totally got sidetracked, was licensing. I don't have to worry about licensing at all anymore, and that's even with the virtual machines.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about buying Word anymore because it's in my subscription. I don't have to worry about the version of it. Am I running Word 2013? Am I running Word 2016? I'm running the latest version. Because one, if I even install it, it'll just self-update, right? But majority of the time, I just work out of it on the cloud. And you talk about phones. I mean, I could just get in and start writing Word documents now, and I don't even need a computer per se.
Yep.
Right? So, yeah, I think that's interesting when you say that. Like, how are desktops, laptops, whatever we're using as our main interface to the cloud, how is that going to change over the next 10 years?
It's already changing for like gamers too. I mean, you can have your cell phone that's just not really a super high powered device. You plug it into your TV and you just stream your games and stuff. It's
it's the same conversation as having physical games versus digital games, right? 10 years ago, Microsoft had a huge debacle on their hands when they released the Xbox One because they said that they were going to require their games to be digital, and people had a fit. But today, I mean, that's most of what everyone does. They don't buy physical games anymore. So, I mean, it's just going to scale to everything else, I feel like. I mean, and there's positives and there's negatives to everything, right? So, I mean, yes, there's convenience to this, clearly, but there's also a less sense of an ownership. So maybe you don't have a physical device in your hands. You don't have the physical, DVD in your hand anymore. It's all in the cloud.
I think music started there, right? I think music was the first, probably best example of data going away, of owning a song.
Right.
And now we all have subscriptions into music.
I mean, no one owns songs anymore, especially when you stream them.
I have so many MP3s sitting on a server at home of mine that I never listen to, but I spend a lot of time ripping all my old CDs, even my DVD library and Blu-ray discs. I have an entire collection of that, but I don't even buy those anymore. Mm-hmm. Everything I have, I can't think of. I mean, I do buy movies when I want to keep them on my personal Plex server and stuff like that. But majority of the time, it's streaming.
It's just the convenience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm paying for services to stream everything. I'm streaming movies. So from one standpoint, that's good because now I'm reducing my storage needs, right? So I'm not having to continue to add drives and increase my storage. I'm just using somebody else's storage.
You don't have to have a wall, this whole office of VHS tapes to watch your favorite show anymore either. So
I miss those days.
But you don't actually own anything.
I mean, I feel like for music and movies, the cost kind of, I think, probably benefited the consumer. I mean, you pay $10 a month for Spotify. Before, I think iTunes, like an album was like $12.
Yeah,
$1.25 a song.
Yeah.
You buy one album, and that's every album right now available to you per month.
And then even with movies, I mean, like, the average HBO Max, whatever you want, it's like $10-15. I mean, a Blu-ray was like, when they first came out, like $30 or $40.
Oh yeah. So if you had HBO Max and Disney Plus, and half the time you're getting Disney Plus free with something, if you're using Verizon or T-Mobile. So you may only be paying $30 a month in streaming costs, and like you said, that's one Blu-ray, right? So that's one movie where now you have this unlimited library between 2 or 3 services of every Blu-ray that's probably been out there, or however you want to look at 4K HDR film, which is kind of cool. And now, again, we're not having to store it. I mean, I think one of the things that we used to run into all the time in the old days was people storing their MP3s on servers in companies, and then we started blocking the ability to store MP3s on servers because people started dropping their libraries. They wanted songs at work, Nowadays, we're blocking Spotify at work because everybody's streaming Spotify, and so they're using up all the bandwidth because nobody turns on the radio anymore. We're all listening to everything digitally.
What is the radio?
Exactly.
I don't know what that is.
Sirius XM.
Is that the thing with the commercials when I turn it on?
It is.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and then you had to tune it, get the right station.
They play like the same song like every 5 minutes. That's
pretty much
what it is. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, when you start thinking of how things have changed, everything in our society has changed, and all of these subscription services, in the end, have all benefited the small business and how we manage small businesses, how we can take our partners to the next level and run them like enterprises, but for a small footprint, for a small fee.
I mean, I think like the only like it's just like anything in IT, to be honest. Like if you're not into it, you have to explain to somebody why the cost of the cloud could be beneficial. Like I mean, you get Spotify because you see the price difference of paying for an album or just paying for Spotify and the convenience. You're like, and then for a consumer, you're like, oh, that's a no-brainer. Realistically, sometimes the cloud can be that way too. It's just breaking it down to the partner to understand why it is that way, and that's where Nate comes into play.
And what do you do again? Because I can't remember what your title is.
I don't know.
There's a few.
I wear all the hats.
You wear all the hats. Well,
I think the conversation is the biggest thing, right? Determining what they need is the largest part.
What they need, how long they need it for, how much of it they need.
Correct. Do you really need to take every piece of data that your company has ever created across the last 50 years? Do you really need it in SharePoint Online? Or can you just take the things that you've been using the last 2 years and move it up and somehow store that in sort of cold storage solution? Thinking of like something like Glacier that Amazon had for a long time, products like that, or putting it on, maybe getting rid of the server on site and just using a local NAS as your it's a little bit easier device to manage. The costs are a lot cheaper, and just storing your legacy data there for now, and then getting your teams into a more modern solution for managing their data, for having access to their data anytime, anywhere, any place, and then having all the cool benefits that come with that. So that's
going back to the, talking about the cloud and, the convenience factor, also the scalability, like we talked about, we've had instances with some clients where they're like, we're running out of storage. That's when we have to have the conversation and say, well, we can either buy more hard drives, get more storage, or you're going to have to remove some data.
We have that with email.
Yeah.
I've got to have every email ever sent to me. Like, okay, there's a fee. If you're fine paying it, I don't care. And here you go. Your 50 gigabit mailbox is now 100 gigabit.
God, we're talking about cloud and data storage. The biggest benefit I've ever seen is getting rid of Exchange on-prem. Jesus.
Yeah, getting rid of Exchange on-prem. We've had that conversation, I think, several episodes now, how much we all love Microsoft Office 365 or even Google Mail. Just not having email on-premise, because email on-premise, as good as it was and how awesome it was a nightmare to manage.
Maybe in 2000, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a life where I'd want that. But
I got used to being an Exchange administrator for years, since Exchange 5.5 and managing information stores over and over again. I didn't go back to Lotus Notes. I mean, you want to talk about a nightmare. Lotus Notes as an email system. And go back to mainframes and running CC Mail. That's a nightmare.
I'm so glad that I'm not old like you.
I'm so glad I've never seen a green screen in my life.
I see the gray hair coming out of his bald head.
Yes. Doing email in green screens and on mainframes was a nightmare. So modern day email is so much better.
Yeah.
That's a solution. There's no benefit like these days to keeping it local anymore. There's nothing.
Yeah. Why would you even have mail local? It makes no sense.
Right. When
Google's there, Microsoft is there. I mean, and if you even look at the bigger partners out there, right, who used to have email solutions. I'll use one as an example, is GoDaddy. I mean, they used to provide POP services, so you could build your own little email server out there. They resell Office 365 now. Mm-hmm. So when you see major companies who used to have little email servers everywhere go to these massive solutions, it just shows you that nobody wants to deal with it. Let the company that created it deal with it. They'll run it the best. Whether that's Google or Microsoft. I can't think of any other email solution really out there I would want besides one of those two. Yeah. Maybe AOL.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's just one example that makes me think that, today is a conversation we still need to have, if you want to have local versus cloud. But that example is something that makes me think that in the next 10, 20 years that there's not going to be, like, just like that example. I mean, maybe we're going to be thinking, why did we want anything to be local? 10, 20 years, why would we want that now? And maybe it's going to be the same conversation. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because in 10 years and 20 years, if I just kind of think about it, I mean, information should just be available to us anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, I mean,
more so than it is today. Like everything you've ever wanted, whether it's a song, a movie, or every version of a file that I've created in all time, I'll have access to.
And think about how fast we can get to any information that we want right now, too.
I mean, as infrastructure improves, I mean, you're gonna the gap is gonna narrow of the benefit of it being either across the hallway or across the country. That gap is just gonna continually narrow.
Well, that's cool, guys. I appreciate your time and talking about our data and how much data we have, and some data that we don't even have anymore on site. So I appreciate it. So our next episode is episode 8, digital transformation. We ask all of you to join us for that. And if you want to head over to MIS.tech/DIY, you can catch up on all the previous 6-7 episodes we've done, which is crazy to believe. We've been talking about IT for that many episodes already. You can find full episodes, clips, additional resources, blogs, guides, checklists out there that go along with all the information we've talked about over the last 7 episodes now. So follow along on social media, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, I'm sure nobody in the room has a Twitter account anymore. We've all moved to Mastodon, right? You guys, I mean, you're supposed to be the young guys.
I don't know what Facebook is. That's for old
Facebook?
people.
Yeah. Well, I forgot to mention, last time we talked about our wonderful other solution we used before Facebook.
MySpace?
Yeah. Head over to our MySpace page.
Wow.
We're the only ones up there left. No, just kidding. But we know Adam brought that up. It was kind of funny. Go out to our MySpace. So thanks again for coming. Appreciate it. Like, subscribe, follow us.